You know those stories that seem small at first, but before you realize it, they're already stirring your conscience, opening your eyes, and changing how you see the world? Well, today's story is one of them. It all began on an ordinary afternoon. Sofia had just left the grocery store, like she did almost every week. Her hair was tied up messily, she wore basic pants, a wrinkled t-shirt, and carried 2 shopping bags. No makeup, no heels, no designer accessories. Just her, in the simplest way possible. But hidden in that simplicity was a detail no one in that store could have imagined. Sofia was the true owner of it all. As she approached the entrance of one of the most expensive stores in the city, a luxury boutique with mirrored glass and a red carpet, she was stopped. The receptionist looked her up and down, frowned, and asked with a cold, automatic tone, "Ma'am, just so you know, the discounts are at the budget stores in the mall." "This is an exclusive service." Sofia paused, not because she didn't know what to say, but because she was tired of the same script. This wasn't the first time it happened, and sadly, she knew it wouldn't be the last. Because the problem wasn't her. It was the automatic judgment, the kind that shuts doors before someone even reaches for the handle. But unlike other times, Sofia decided to take a different approach. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She didn't confront. She simply smiled, thanked the woman, and turned around. Anyone watching probably thought she was leaving, but what no one realized was that behind that soft smile was a strategy. She didn't leave defeated, she left determined. The next morning, the scene was different. A black SUV parked in front of the store. Sofia stepped out from the back seat, now wearing a sharp blazer, her hair down, and a firm expression. Beside her, 2 assistants and a legal director. As she walked through the entrance that had been denied to her the day before, the receptionist turned pale. That nobody, the woman treated like she didn't belong, was now walking in as the owner. Sofia asked to gather the entire team, sales staff, receptionists, managers, everyone. Right there, in the store's main display window, she told her side of the story. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. She explained that the store she built with so much effort to value people, not status, had lost its way. That the once warm, respectful service had become infected with a culture of judgment, and that it needed to change, urgently. In that moment, something bigger was born. An internal campaign called Beyond the Display, which later grew into a national movement. The goal? To train staff in all the chain's stores to see customers as human beings, not walking displays. The initiative went viral on social media, inspired other companies, and became a case study in corporate empathy lectures. But more than anything, this is one of those stories that make us look in the mirror and ask, how many Sofias have I overlooked? How many amazing people have we ignored just because they didn't look important enough? And how many opportunities have we missed because we judged too quickly? What's most remarkable is that Sofia had every reason in the world to retaliate. She could have fired people, exposed them, humiliated those who mistreated her, but she chose something much harder and much more powerful: to educate, to transform, to inspire. She understood that the issue wasn't personal, it was structural, and the only way to break that cycle was through example. And what an example. Because not everyone can turn pain into a project, humiliation into legacy, and silence into a revolution. And honestly, if this story moved you, maybe it's because you've lived something similar. Maybe you felt that look, that cold phrase, that silent "come back later." Or maybe, and this also takes courage to admit, maybe you've been the one who judged, who assumed, who got distracted by the wrapping and missed the gift. But you know what's beautiful about all this? It's that, like Sofia, we all have the chance to do things differently, to look at others with more depth, to open doors with our hearts before we lock them with our eyes. Because in the end, it's these stories that shape us, that wake us up, that make us better people. So next time someone walks into your life looking ordinary, listen, observe, ask. Because that person standing in front of you might be carrying more than an appearance. They might be carrying an entire world of possibilities. And maybe, just maybe, that person is about to change your life too. Some people carry the weight of the world, but no one sees it when they're holding a grocery bag. Sofia walked into that store slowly, with firm yet humble steps. No heels, no jewelry. And that was all it took for the receptionist to decide she didn't belong. She said appointments were required, as if the place was reserved for some celebrity catwalk. She had no idea she had just blocked access to someone who was there for something far greater than a pair of shoes. This is one of those stories that show how appearance still acts like a social password. Have you noticed how often a wrinkled suit can open more doors than a brilliant mind? It happens everywhere. And the most dangerous part is how easily we get used to this kind of silent judgment, as if it were normal. If you've ever been turned away for not looking polished enough, you know exactly what Sofia felt at that door. But there's something only people who are great on the inside can do: to stay silent without disappearing. Sofia didn't respond with yelling or insults. She simply turned away, took a deep breath, and walked out. And that's when the game started to shift. Because some stories don't reveal themselves through noise. They unfold through the quiet movement of someone who knows exactly where they're going and who they'll return with. In life, true power rarely yells. It observes, it calculates, and it acts at the right time. What no one in that store knew was that Sofia was far more than she appeared. She was the CEO of an educational group with over 15,000 students, a woman who shaped leaders while being underestimated by people who couldn't even lead their own biases. More than that, she was the majority shareholder of the very shoe brand they tried to keep her from exploring. That ordinary customer was, in fact, the owner of the board. These are the stories that teach us how humility and greatness walk hand in hand. Sofia chose not to flaunt her wealth, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't need to prove anything to anyone, like those quiet investors who ride the subway yet manage billion-dollar assets, just like Warren Buffett, who's been eating at the same diner for decades. People who know the value of a glance, not a brand label. And when someone like that is ignored, the world seems to stop, just for a moment. Because it's in that silence, between the scorn received and the respect to be demanded, that the turnaround begins. Sofia didn't dwell on resentment. She knew real change doesn't come from anger, but from vision. And while some thought they had gotten rid of a nuisance, she was already crafting something much bigger, something only great minds in motion are capable of building. Silence has power. But not just any silence, the kind loaded with intention, from someone who already knows their next move. Sofia didn't leave feeling wounded. She left alert. She didn't call a friend, didn't rant on social media. She called her legal team, asked for a full report, security footage, complaint history, incident logs. She wanted to see beyond the receptionist, because the problem is never just one person. It's a deeply rooted pattern. These are the stories that show us the power of strategy. When you stay silent on the outside but start moving pieces on the inside, something big is about to happen. It's like a chess game. Those who talk too much reveal their strategy, but those who observe understand the entire board. And honestly, you can apply that to your own work life. If a colleague disrespects you, don't react right away. Watch, take notes, understand the whole scenario before making a move. Victory belongs to those who act with a cool head and a burning purpose. While the store went on with business as usual, thinking the storm had passed, Sofia was already engineering a transformation. And the most interesting part? She wasn't seeking revenge. She wanted accountability. She didn't want to humiliate. She wanted to teach. Because she knew some failures must be exposed, but only so they're never repeated again. And for that, she was about to return. But this time, with the weight of her name and the power of someone who refuses to be overlooked. The next day, the sound of a black SUV pulling up in front of the store wasn't just a car arriving, it was the signal of a major turning point. The door opened, and Sofia stepped out, now accompanied by the brand's new chief operating officer. The employees, who had barely noticed her the day before, froze. She was no longer just a random customer. She was a woman who could change everything with a single decision, and she wasn't there to shop for shoes. These stories remind us that true authority doesn't have to be imposed. It announces itself. And what Sofia did there was exactly that. She walked in with poise, with the confidence of someone who doesn't need to raise their voice to be heard. You know when someone enters a room and everything shifts? That's exactly what happened. And you know what? That applies to life too. When you know your worth, you don't need to prove anything. You show it through your actions. She called for an emergency meeting right there in the middle of the store. No theatrics, no public revenge. Just a firm presence and a gaze that said, "It's time for change." The setting was the same as the day before, but the energy was completely different. And it's in this kind of contrast that true transformation is born. And believe me, this turning point was about to reveal truths that had been buried for far too long. When a prepared person takes action, there's no hesitation or improvisation. There's a method. Sofia wasn't there just to confront someone. She wanted to understand what allowed that behavior to flourish in the first place. That's why she immediately requested security footage, customer service records, and even undercover customer tests. Everything would be assessed, no filters. She knew that if she wanted to change the culture, she had to start at the root, and with evidence in hand. These are the stories that show us the unglamorous side of leadership: hard work, detailed analysis, and the courage to look in the mirror. Sofia identified flaws far beyond an unprepared receptionist. There was a pattern of exclusion, of cold service, of constant visual judgment. The kind of mistake that hides in small gestures, but when combined, they drive clients away and destroy reputations. And the ironic part? This happens even in the most prestigious companies, if no one is brave enough to investigate. With a notebook in hand and her team beside her, she began drafting the store's new service protocol. The focus was no longer status, it was welcome. Service that would make anyone, branded or not, feel respected. And the restructuring would start right there. But the next step would be even more delicate, facing directly the person who had closed the door on her, without having the slightest idea who she was rejecting. In front of the entire staff, Sofia asked for the receptionist to be brought in. The silence that filled the store was almost tangible. The young woman arrived, confused, until she heard the question that would make anyone rethink their actions. "How many other women like me have you kept out of this store?" There was no anger in Sofia's voice. There was a steady, calm tone, the kind only someone in full control can maintain. These stories reveal the power of confrontation when done with wisdom. Sofia could have fired the employee on the spot, exposed her arrogance, and closed the case. But she chose something deeper, because sometimes what we really need is someone to clearly show us the weight of what we've done, so we never make the same mistake again. It's like a social mirror. True change only happens when you can see yourself from the inside out. The entire staff watched that scene like a movie. But this wasn't fiction. It was real life. And in that moment, there was no doubt that something much bigger was happening. Sofia didn't want to just fix a mistake. She wanted to spark reflection. And it's in that kind of discomfort that real change is born. But what she did next? That's the part no one saw coming from someone holding that much power. Sofia took a deep breath, and instead of announcing a punishment, did something no one expected. She looked into the receptionist's eyes and made her an offer to join a mentoring program focused on diversity and empathy, with psychological support and bi-weekly training. The idea wasn't punishment. It was transformation. A chance to learn, to grow, to see the world through different eyes. And that, my friend, takes far more courage than simply firing someone. These are the stories that teach us that changing the system starts within people. Sofia knew empathy doesn't come from scolding. It's born from real experiences, from exposure to new perspectives. And that's why she created that project. Because deep down, everyone has a chance to get better, as long as someone turns on the light. And what about you? Have you ever thought about offering learning instead of judgment? In your business, your home, your street? The employee accepted, half surprised, half embarrassed, but visibly moved. Because when someone offers growth instead of rejection, the impact is lasting. The store would never be the same again. Neither would the receptionist. And what began as a personal lesson was about to become an entire movement, one that would ripple across all of the brand's locations. The transformation wasn't just a promise. It started the very next day. Sofia personally oversaw the store's overhaul, from product placement to customer service scripts. But the most important shift wasn't in the new layout. It was in the team's mindset. Each employee was now trained not just to sell, but to listen, to welcome, and to respect. After all, it's no use having the most expensive shoe in the window if the customer feels small the moment they walk in. These are the stories that show what purposeful reconstruction looks like. The change didn't come from an HR manual. It came from lived experience, from the impact of a thoughtless action that became a bridge to empathy. The new customer service protocol included constant feedback, inclusion workshops, and even a system where clients could rate the store's atmosphere. A true ecosystem of respect began to take shape, and with it, a new way of doing business. And the most striking part? Sales increased. Yes, when a customer feels seen, they come back, they recommend, they trust. Because we don't just buy products, we buy experiences, memories, connections, and that store, once known for exclusivity, was now gaining recognition for its humanity. But what no one expected was what came next. And no, it wasn't just another marketing campaign. A month later, something surprising appeared on the brand's internal blog, a testimony written by the receptionist herself. With simple yet moving words, she shared how she had judged Sofia based on her appearance, and how that moment exposed a behavior she didn't even know she was repeating. She said that for the first time she wasn't ashamed of being corrected, but of having let so much prejudice slip by unnoticed. She ended her piece by saying that encounter changed how she saw the world, and how she saw people. These are the stories that prove true transformation isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in awareness. What started as a mistake became a lesson. What could have ended in dismissal became a new beginning. And believe me, this applies to every space: schools, companies, even circles of friends. When someone dares to publicly share how they've changed, that story becomes a mirror, an invitation, a catalyst, and above all, a healing force. The testimony went viral among the brand's employees. Many who had also acted on impulse began rethinking their attitudes. That's when the idea was born. What if this story went beyond the company and reached the streets? The company's communication team captured the moment's spirit and turned that quiet experience into a powerful message, something that would leave a legacy, something that would soon be seen in storefronts across the country. The story gained momentum and became a national campaign. Billboards, corporate videos, magazine ads, all carried the same message. You never know who's walking through the door. Treat everyone with respect. Sofia's story and the receptionists became the symbol of a new brand philosophy. And more than a marketing move, it was a real commitment. That black SUV, once unnoticed, now stood as a symbol of renewal, of quiet justice, of leadership with purpose. These are the stories that cross borders, that are born from discomfort and blossom into lessons that inspire thousands. Companies began replicating the mentorship and empathy-based auditing system Sofia had created. Influencers shared the story, and customers started visiting stores not just to shop, but to experience the brand behind the transformation. Because when a story touches the heart, it becomes a movement. It becomes an example. And the most beautiful part? No one had to shout to be heard. It all began with someone being turned away at the door, and ended with that same person opening doors for thousands more. A lesson that proves respect, empathy, and active listening aren't utopian ideals. They're choices. And the moment a brand decides to live by them, it stops just selling products. It starts selling stories that change lives. Now tell me, how many doors have you closed without even realizing they were opportunities disguised as ordinary people? How many times has silent prejudice spoken louder than empathy? Sometimes we don't even notice. It's subtle. A sideways glance. A greeting that never comes. A quick judgment without the right to explain. And just like that, in that moment, the chance to meet an incredible person is gone. No goodbye. No second chance. We grow up learning to value packaging. Expensive clothes, perfect posture, polished speech, but we forget that what truly matters lives inside. And that's why so many stories go unnoticed every day, because we still measure worth by what we see, not by what we feel. And then comes the big question. How many Sofias have you already ignored out there? How many people crossed your path carrying entire universes inside them, but were reduced to a stereotype because of how they looked? Sofia might be working at your building's reception desk. She might be that woman with grocery bags who walked into the store. She might be the guy who asked you for directions in the elevator.
She might be you. Have you ever thought about that? Perhaps the cruelest thing about silent prejudice is this. It doesn't scream. It doesn't warn. It just happens. Automatically, unconsciously, hidden within habits we learned without ever questioning. And that's why this kind of reflection hurts. Because we see ourselves in the mirror, and we don't always like what we see. But if there's one thing that good stories teach us, it's that pain can also be a portal to change, to growth,
to a new beginning. Because it all starts when we choose to see differently, when we decide to stop looking only with our eyes and start looking with our hearts. That's when stories change direction, when empathy steps in and builds bridges where there used to be walls. And maybe you're thinking, okay, but what do I do with this? Simple. Turn that pain into action. Apply that awareness where you have influence, in your company's service, in the way you raise your kids, in how you speak to strangers, in the feedback you give, in the looks you send out into the world. You know that employee you've never really noticed? That cleaning lady? That shy intern? The delivery guy? Start there. Offer respect, attention, genuine interest. Because sometimes a small gesture is the spark that sets a revolution in motion. How many stories could we rewrite just by changing how we treat others? How many opportunities for connection, growth, and learning are hidden behind simple faces, soft voices, and humble gestures? And yes, maybe you're thinking this is just another video with a pretty message. But let me ask you, are you really going to watch all this and keep living the same way? Will you really turn off the screen and go back to judging by appearance, excluding by instinct, ignoring out of habit? Or will you this time let the message sink in? Maybe today is the day you decide to be the change, to flip the script, to stop waiting for the world to change, and start changing your world. Because in the end, real impact doesn't lie in speeches. It lies in the small, daily, silent actions. And that's where you come in. Yes, you can be the next chapter of this story. So, if this message touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Tag someone. Spread the idea. Because every person who understands the power of empathy is another spark for change in the world. And you know, one spark, placed in the right spot, can ignite an entire revolution. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and leave a comment. How many doors have you realized you've closed unintentionally? And more importantly, how many do you intend to open from now on? Because here, we don't tell stories just to move people. We tell them to transform. And transformation, it starts with you.